I'm Mike Leach, former president of IGFA. This IGFA rules presentation is designed to help you while you're targeting world records.
And I'm Rob Kramer, current president of IGFA. This video will also help those of you who either fish in tournaments or are IGFA certified observers. So let's get started.
IGFA rules allow any kind of line, including monofilament, multifilament, Dacron, spectra fibers, and lead core lines. However, wire lines are prohibited.
Backing not attached to the fishing line is allowed without any restriction as to size or material.
If fishing line is attached to the backing, the catch is classified under the heaviest of the two lines. Backing must not exceed 130 pounds if attached to the line.
You do not have to use double line, but if you do, there are some restrictions. First, the double line must consist of the actual fishing line used to catch the fish. Second, double lines are measured from the start of the knot, such as a bimini twist, splice, or other connection, to the furthest end of the knot, swivel, or other connecting device used to connect the double line to the leader or trace or other terminal tackle. 3. In line classes up to and including 20 pound, the double can't exceed 15 feet. The combined length of double line and leader may not exceed 20 feet. With tackle over 20 pound class, the double line cannot exceed 30 feet, and the combined length of double and leader may not be longer than 40 feet.
The use of a leader is not required, but if you use one, there are some rules to follow. First, the length of the leader is the overall length, including the lure or hook arrangement. Obviously, the leader must be connected to the lure or double with a knot, splice, or other device. There are no restrictions on the strength or material of the leader, but any holding devices such as this are strictly prohibited. It is okay for a leader to be in more than one section so long as the maximum length is observed.
In all line classes up to and including 20 pound, the leader is limited to 15 feet. However, the combined length of double line and leader cannot exceed 20 feet. The leader on line classes above 20 pound can be up to 30 feet as long as the double line and leader does not exceed 40 feet. In other words, with 20 pound tackle or less, you can use up to 15 feet of double and up to 15 feet of leader, but the combination cannot be over 20 feet. With tackle over 20 pounds, you can use double up to 30 feet and leader up to 30 feet, but the combined total cannot exceed 40 feet.
Remember, when measuring your leader, the length includes the length of the lure back to and including the bend of the trailing hook. Most professional crews will use the maximum length of leader allowed and a smaller piece of double line because remember, the mate can only touch the leader. He can never touch the double line.
Rods must comply with sporting ethics and customs. Rods giving an angler an unfair advantage are not allowed under IGFA rules. This includes rods with a tip length less than 40 inches or a rod butt longer than 27 inches. The measurements should be taken from a point directly under the center of the reel.
The curved butt is measured in a straight line, not along the curve of the butt. When placed in a gimbal, the measurement is taken from the reel seat to the pivot point of the gimbal. There are exceptions to the 27-inch butt length restriction, and that is for surf casting rods.
Reels must comply with sporting ethics and customs. Power-driven reels of any kind are prohibited. Ratchet handle reels are prohibited, as are reels designed to be cranked with both hands. This is a 2-speed reel with high-speed reeling forward and low-speed reeling backwards. This is acceptable under IGFA rules.
With live or deadbait fishing, no more than 2 single hooks can be used. Both must be firmly embedded in or securely attached to the bait. The eyes of the hooks must be at least a hook's length apart. In other words, the hooks cannot overlap. The eyes of the 2 hooks cannot be over 18 inches apart. The one exception to this rule is that the point of one hook can be passed through the eye of the other. The use of a dangling or swinging hook is prohibited. Double or treble hooks used with live or dead bait is against IGFA rules.
This hook is out of compliance because the hooks are not a hook's length apart. The hooks overlap. Double and treble hooks are not allowed on a lure with skirt material. Gang hooks, such as double and treble hooks, are allowed with plugs and other artificial lures specifically designed for this use, but they must be free swinging. Up to 3 hooks can be used on plugs, but bait may not be used with double or treble hooks. Now let's move on to the cockpit.
More specifically, the fighting chair. Fighting chairs may not have any mechanically propelled devices that aid the angler in fighting the fish. However, mechanical devices that simply swing the chair without aiding the angler are acceptable under IGFA rules. Gimbals must be free swinging. Any gimbal that allows the angler to reduce strain on the rod while fighting the fish is prohibited. Offset stanchions such as this are becoming more typical on the larger sport fishing boats. They are acceptable and they help the angler swing the rod to clear the covering boards on the corners.
Gaffs and nets used to boat a fish cannot be longer than 8 feet. When using a fighting gaff with a detachable head, the rope cannot be longer than 30 feet as measured from the point where it is attached to the head of the gaff. Only gaffs with a single hook are acceptable under IGFA rules. Harpoon or lance attachments are also strictly prohibited. If you use a tail rope, it cannot exceed 30 feet. When fishing from a very large boat, like the long-range boats out of Southern California, where an 8-foot gaff would not reach the water, then gaffs over 8 feet are allowed. This also holds true for bridges, piers, and other high platforms.
Entangling devices of any kind are prohibited, either with or without hooks. Outriggers, downriggers, spreader bars, and kites are allowed, providing that the actual fishing line is attached to the snap or other release device, either directly or with some other material. Attaching the double line or leader to these devices is not allowed under IGFA rules. It is okay to use a spreader bar when used strictly as a teaser.
Daisy chains, birds, floats, or similar devices may be used if they do not unfairly hamper the normal fighting ability of the fish, which would give the angler an unfair advantage. Safety lines may be attached to the rod, provided it does not assist the angler in fighting the fish. From the time that the fish strikes or takes the bait or lure, the angler alone must hook, fight, and land the fish unaided by any other person, except as allowed under IGFA regulations. This is a cardinal rule. If the rod is in a holder when the fish strikes, the angler must remove the rod as quickly as possible. The intent of this rule is that the angler should strike and hook the fish with rod in hand. IGFA understands that sometimes a fish will be hooked before the angler gets to the rod, but the angler should still remove the rod as soon as possible and under no circumstances crank on the reel in the rod holder while the fish is on the hook. If a single angler gets strikes on more than one rod, only the first fish fought by the angler will be considered under IGFA rules. If a double line is used, the intent of IGFA rules is that the fish will be fought on the single line most of the time it takes to land the fish.
A harness may be attached to the rod or reel, but not to the fighting chair. The harness or fighting belt may be adjusted by another person as long as they do not touch the angler's rod, reel, or line during the fight. Rod belts or belly gimbals are permitted under IGFA rules.
Once the angler brings the leader within grasp of the mate, or the leader is wound to the rod tip, one or more people are allowed to hold the leader. More than one gaffer is allowed in addition to the person holding the leader. Just make sure the gaff is in hand when the fish is gaffed. IGFA rules apply until the fish is weighed, or in the case of many tournaments, released. In other words, never shoot, harpoon, or lance any fish that is brought to the scale. If a person other than the angler touches any part of the rod, reel, or line, including the double line, either bodily or with any device, the fish will be disqualified. This includes from the time the fish first strikes until it is either landed or released.
If an obstacle to the passage of the line through the rod guides has to be removed, such as a rubber band or seaweed, then the obstacle must be held and pulled or cut free. Under no circumstances should the line itself be held or even touched by anyone other than the angler during this process. Resting the rod in a holder, on the gunnel, or any other object is strictly prohibited while fighting the fish. You may not hand line or use a rope attached in any manner to the angler's line or leader for the purpose of holding or lifting the fish.
Shooting, harpooning, or lancing any fish, including big angry sharks, at any stage of the catch is against IGFA rules. It is not allowed to chum with or use as bait any part of a mammal, including skin or blood. The exception to this is pork rind on a lure or bucktail on a jig. Using a boat or device to beach or drive a fish into shallow water to deprive the fish of its normal ability to swim is prohibited under IGFA rules.
Anglers are not allowed to change the rod and reel while the fish is being played. So if you are being spooled, you are not allowed to attach your rod and reel to another rod, throw the first rod overboard, and continue fighting the fish on the other rod like you sometimes hear about. Splicing, removing, or adding to the line while the fish is being played is also strictly against IGFA rules.
Intentionally foul hooking a fish is against IGFA rules. If a fish accidentally gets foul hooked, it will not disqualify the catch. If you catch a fish in a manner that the leader or double line never leaves the rod tip, that fish will not be accepted under IGFA rules. The following are acts that will disqualify a catch.
To break these rules could cost you a world record or a fishing tournament. You may not use the kind of bait or size of bait that is illegal. An example of this might be using an undersized yellowtail to catch a fish. It is not allowed to attach the angler's line or leader to any part of the boat or other object for the purpose of holding or lifting the fish. If a fish escapes before gaffing or netting and is recaptured by any other method other than IGFA rules, that fish will not be allowed. If a fish gets off the hook, even if the mate can quickly gaff it, that fish is lost.
If a rod breaks while the fish is being played so the tip is less than 40 inches, or the break severely impairs the rod angling characteristics, the fish will not count under IGFA rules. Mutilation to the fish prior to landing or boating the fish, or officially releasing it, will disqualify the catch. Mutilation is defined as an injury that removes or penetrates the flesh of the fish caused by sharks or other fish, or mammals or propellers, etc. Injuries caused by line or leader scratches, old healed scars, or regeneration deformities are not considered to be mutilation. Finally, if a fish is hooked or entangled on more than one line, it will be disqualified under IGFA rules. The following are common violations to IGFA rules.
In the excitement of a fish striking the lure, be sure to keep these rules in mind. A mate touching the angler's reel while attaching the harness is a common mistake. Another person, other than the angler, touching rod, reel, or line while the fish is being fought. Mate touching the line with hand or gaff handle to keep the line from rubbing on the boat or the outrigger halyards. Mate grabbing double line instead of the leader. Angler fighting two fish at the same time. Mate adjusting drag or clicking off the clicker while the fish is being played. Mate touching the line to remove an object such as a rubber band. An angler may not strike the fish from a striking rod holder or the arm of a fighting chair. These are the saltwater angling rules for the IGFA.
For more information, visit our website at igfa.org.